Aloha, my kako. So happy that you're choosing to spend your time with us here today. My name is Sarita Washington, and I'm going to be your moderator, and I will also be your facilitator for our session today. So happy to have you, especially because we are introducing and presenting my brother, my friend, my colleague. He is more than our institutional assessment specialist, which is a very important role. You know, he turns student data into stories and narratives for us and helps us make sense of that. And I don't think there's any other person who's better to do that for us. And today, speaking of stories, he is going to share his mo'olelo with us. Very unique and special journey. And I'm positive that you'll all get something out of our session today. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, my brother, my friend, Adam Halamano. Adam, you now have the floor. So happy to have you.
Mahalo, Sarita, for that beautiful introduction. Let me go ahead and switch gears real quick. I'm going to share my desktop out for everyone. All right, just let me know if you can see that and we can get started.
Yes, we can see it. You're great.
All right, awesome, wonderful. Aloha mai kako, greetings and welcome to you all. As Sarita mentioned, my name is Adam Kolokahiki Halimano Jr. My family and friends call me Boy. At present, I am the Institutional Assessment Specialist for the Office of Planning, Policy, and Assessment at Leeward Community College. I've been with the University of Hawaii for the past 9 years. Before that, I was in the information technology field for 26 years, wearing almost every conceivable hat you can think of within the tech field. It was my interest in knowledge acquisition and training that led me to the educational space. I'm a local boy born on Oahu, but raised all over the continental US. My family was military. Let's just say my family wasn't military, but let's just say that my mother, she liked to travel a lot. She didn't like to stay in one place for very long. And as it turns out, though, this was a blessing for an extrovert like myself. I'm an ENFJ. I am, for those of you familiar with the Myers-Briggs personality types, apparently I am considered the protagonist. In other words, I'm a ball of creative energy who loves to help others and has strong ideals and values around diversity, equity, and inclusion. I am the eldest of 2 siblings, a father of two grown children, a best friend and confidant, and a devoted partner, hiking companion, movie buddy, green thumb plant daddy, and soulmate. More about my family in just a little bit. But before I get started, I'd like to take this moment to express my deepest gratitude and appreciation to those of you who chose to take time out of your busy schedule to spend a little time with me to hear my story. From my heart to yours, thank you so very much for your interest and attendance today. So, where do I begin? All right, let's see. As you've no doubt surmised from my previous slides, I am a gay man who was married to a woman and is father of 2 grown children. On that note, please allow me to introduce you to my family. The beautiful woman in the photos is Fran. We were married for 30 wonderful years before separating. While we are no longer a couple, we are still best friends and still very much in each other's lives. The little girl is Taylor Kai. She was born on March 5th, 2002. She is now a sophomore in college, currently employed as a teacher's aide, and recently celebrated her 21st birthday earlier this year. The little boy is Pacey Kavena. He was born on October 1st, 2005. He recently graduated from Kapolei High School, was a cadet staff sergeant with the JROTC, has a strong interest in joining the military, and loves everything about Japanese culture and anime. As a former spouse and father, my family means the world to me. The bond we share is very strong. It was the foundation of love that was critical in keeping us together when things got really difficult after I came out as a gay man. But more about that later. I'm sure for many of you, the burning question that is ruminating in your heads right about now is, Adam, if you're attracted to men, why did you marry a woman? All right, simply put, love. The love I had and continue to have for Fran was not based on sex or gender. Our relationship was based on mutual interests, a penchant for laughter, and a desire to be the best we can be for one another. Granted, there were prevailing factors that influenced my actions at the time, and we'll get to more into that in just a little bit. In the end, though, my inability to be honest and true to myself, and to her for that matter, leaves me feeling regretful and embarrassed for the mistake that I've made and the life that she could have had if it weren't for me. Mind you, I don't regret the life that I've had with her, not in the least bit. Rather, I'm deeply remorseful for the fact that I wasn't able to find strength and resolve to tell her the truth about myself when it really mattered the most. Now that the cat is out of the bag, let's add a little color and context to this seemingly unconventional story. Let me take you backward just a little bit so I can get you all caught up. Fran and I met back in 1989. I was 19 at the time. Because of our high energy, extroverted nature, we gravitated to each other like celestial bodies and quickly became fast friends. While there was no sexual attraction there, for me at least, the love we had for each other was boundless. Even back then, I knew in my heart that she'd be an integral part of my life. To what extent, I didn't know. And as young as I was, I never bothered to question it. What I did question, however, was my sexuality. Not in that I didn't understand why I was attracted to men or how I would feel had I actively sought companionship with another man. No, nothing like this. Ultimately, though, the question that weighed heavily on me at the time was more ominous, leaving me to fear the social temperament and backlash of that era. It was the 80s after all. Nobody was talking about gay relationships in a positive way. At that time, the notion of marrying the one you loved, regardless of gender, was a far-off distant pipe dream that was easily eclipsed by the growing toll of HIV/AIDS-related deaths around the globe. Like many of us in the gay community, during this period, I couldn't help but wonder, how would the world treat me if I were openly gay? Interestingly enough, though, the question that I'm often asked now that I'm out of the proverbial closet is, why didn't you tell her you were gay? Given the conservative social climate at the time, the unfortunate answer is fear. Whether the instilled fear was based on forms of judgment, disrespect, and/or loss of something of value, the threat was nonetheless very real for those of us living on the fringe. As a soft-hearted extrovert, I truly feared the threat of not being accepted or understood for my sexuality. At the time, being judged or ridiculed for being something society deemed morally unacceptable, intolerable, and/or offensive weighed heavily on my mind. The last thing I wanted was to lose my job, become a social outcast, or even worse, feel the grievous loss of family and friends. This type of fear ran deep in me, particularly after I had doubled down and married for love, not realizing the long-term implications and direct consequences of my actions, not just for myself, but for everyone I loved. For many men in my position, married or otherwise, the aspects of fear, guilt, and shame are the underlying inhibitors that keep many of us from doing the right thing. Whether it's a matter of coming out to our respective families as gay, bisexual, transgender, or queer, we often find ourselves beholden to external influences. My response to the question, do I feel shame and/or guilt as it pertains to my deception and disguise, is absolutely. For me, it was the many years of fear, guilt, and shame that ultimately led to bouts of severe depression and anxiety. Since my sexuality was under wraps, I wasn't able to talk to anyone about it, leaving me to feel lost and alone for the better part of my life. I was terrified of breaking my silence and coming out to my family. The fraught prospect of failure, disappointment, and or disgrace in the eyes of those who loved me was more than I was willing to wager. My silence and reticence were all I could manage at the time. My shame prevented me from coming to terms with the possibility that I would bring embarrassment to my family and not live up to their expectations, be perceived to be a fraud and liar, somehow push them away for being different, queer, and most damaging, to be a gay man with children. Because of the era that I was raised in, the concept and privilege of being a gay man with children was practically nowhere to be found. Since gay men were perceived to be pedophiles and sex offenders, the simple notion of being gay and a father, on top of that, was inconceivable to those peddling oppressive conservative narratives. If fear and shame weren't bad enough, when it came to keeping my true authenticity at bay, massive guilt was the prevailing impetus that prolonged my silence. My guilt was like a vacuum, preventing me from seeing beyond the reality I was living in and the potential life that I dreamt about. Aside from my sexuality, though, I shared everything with my family. It was difficult. It was very difficult knowing that I wasn't able to be truthfully honest with them, especially Fran. My deception ate at me constantly. Despite the love that I had for her, I couldn't bring myself to tell her that I wasn't physically attracted to women. This brought about feelings of self-denial, since I couldn't even be true to myself, having spent decades playing the hetero role for all intents and purposes. I wish that I had the courage to come out sooner and be a better role model for my children. Someone once asked me shortly after I came out if I considered the impact on the kids. My response to this inquiry was always. From the moment I realized I would become a father to the day my daughter was born, I vowed that the secret of my sexuality would be taken to my grave. I earnestly believed that nothing would change that. After my son was born, I knew there was no turning back. I had to be the father he and his sister needed me to be. I trusted in the fact that the love of my family would keep my depression at bay. At the time, I didn't realize the world would shift for the better, allowing for greater understanding and acceptance of the LGBTQ plus community. And as a result, my perception and view of myself would change for the worse. As the years rolled on, the fidelity of my marriage started to weaken due to a variety of typical marital challenges. My sexuality was just another aspect thrown in there for good measure. I was a gay man with no outlet, and opportunities were suddenly everywhere. So the question at hand is, was there infidelity during my marriage? I'd be lying to you folks if I said no, but the simple and honest answer is yes. I committed adultery. Now, I realize some of you might not agree with this admission and how I essentially desecrated the sanctity of my marriage by giving in to my carnal needs. I get it, and I totally respect your position. However, if possible, I only ask respectfully that you try to understand mine. Am I proud of my actions? Not particularly, no. But the fact of the matter is that as a gay man, I spent well over a decade during the early half of my marriage suppressing my innate physical needs, allowing myself the latitude and opportunity to give into that side of me that lay dormant was a form of release that was actually cathartic and meaningful on so many levels. For me, it was the outlet I needed in order to ask myself hard-hitting questions. What did I want for myself? Was I happy living in the shadows, continually lying to the ones that I loved? Could I be a happy man could I be happier as a gay man? Would I be able to find the courage to speak my truth? While these were great questions, my reality was fixed, and there was no way out of the predicament I created for myself, or so I thought. For those of you who have been patiently waiting, the answer to this beautiful question is for you. How did I come out to my family? What happened that turned everything around? COVID happened. Let me do a quick breakdown. It's Mo'olelo time, story time. The events that led to my coming out were a miracle and a blessing. As we all know, the pandemic had shifted everything for everyone. At the time, I noticed that my son's behavior was different, and I knew he was experiencing something, and I didn't know what it was. Rather than confronting him directly, I decided to check in with his sister first, since they're very close. It was a Saturday morning, and I found Taylor sitting at the dining room table, eating breakfast. I approached her and asked if she knew what was going on with her brother. In less than 5 minutes, she was able to tell me that he's been frustrated with all the instructional changes that was happening at his high school. They were now fully online, and he had a difficult time adjusting to the transition. With this insight, I thanked Taylor and was about to walk away. Before I could, she grabbed my hand and asked me a very interesting question. She asked, "Daddy, do you remember Hawaiian Girl?" At first, I was confused, but I responded, "Yes, I remember Hawaiian Girl. That's one of your girlfriends from high school, right?" She replied, "Yes. Do you remember when we used to call each other wives and girlfriends?" With curiosity and a fair amount of intrigue, I responded, "Yes, I do. Why?" She responded, "Well, I've been thinking about it, Daddy, and I think I could bend that way, Be interested in a girl, that is." With a smile on my face, I responded, "That's wonderful, baby girl. You know I love you regardless of your sexual orientation, right? I got your back. I love you no matter what." With tears in her eyes, she grabbed me by the hands and whispered, "I know, Daddy. But you know what?" Nervously, I questioned, "What?" Her voice quivering and tears flowing down the sides of her cheeks, she whispered, "If my dad was gay, I would love him no matter what." At that very moment, I realized my daughter had just called me out. She knew I was gay, and in her own way, she wanted me to know it. I couldn't look at her. I was now looking at the ground, watching my tears as they hit the floor and began to puddle. I kept telling myself, she knows. She knows. What are you going to do? After a few minutes, I found the strength to look up at her. With tears in my eyes and fear in my voice, I whispered to her, "Your daddy is gay, baby girl. I'm gay." She grabbed my hands tightly, smiled, and said softly, "I know, Daddy. I know." There's much more to this story. Suffice it to say, I came out to my son the following Monday. With my children's support, I came out to Fran later that evening. It was very, very difficult, heartbreaking in so many different ways, but we got through it as a family. Now, the million-dollar question that has everyone pondering is, how exactly did you work through it? What did we employ to navigate that life-altering, relationship-damaging situation? In a nutshell, we communicated and listened with open hearts. While it was very difficult at first, we realized that we still loved each other. During our conversations, I told Fran that I had many opportunities to leave. I could have left shortly after we married when I realized that I have made an awful mistake. I could have left before and after the kids were born, but I didn't. I told her that I loved her and the kids and that I was prepared to take my secret to the grave. In response, she told me that if she found out that I was gay after I died, she wouldn't have been able to live with that regret. With that, she created a new, stronger foundation for our relationship built on transparency and trust. From this experience, I found absolution, redemption, and release through various forms of forgiveness. I was given an opportunity to redeem and heal myself by sharing everything that I kept from her over the years. And I do mean everything, full transparency, nothing off the table. During this time, I was able to find forgiveness for myself and the things that I did that some would deem inexcusable. This allowed me for the very first time to be truly happy for the person that I saw in the mirror. With forgiveness comes acceptance. When it when it comes to my reasons for keeping my sexuality a secret, my family stood by me 100%. Knowing that they understand the rationale for not coming out means the world to me. Because of this, I was able to find acceptance in who I truly am and not who I am not. Over time, I was able to accept the fact that others will have different opinions of my journey, and in the end, that's okay. Because in the end, love is all that matters. Having the love of family and friends is an absolute blessing that I don't take lightly. I am grateful for their compassion and unwavering support for everything that has transpired over the past few years. Their love and support now elevate me, enabling me to love myself after many years of silent depression and grief. With newfound happiness, I have found the strength to still have love for others who choose not to embrace me for the out and proud person that I am today. And yeah, I'm okay with that. So after all that is said and done, people are very curious to know, how are we doing today? What's everything like now? Believe it or not, my family and I are stronger than ever. I mean, stronger than ever. Mind you, I'm not saying that everything up until that point has been rainbows and unicorns. No, far from that. Not at all, but rather the love and devotion that we have for each other is the super glue that holds our family together. Fran and I are best friends, and the love and the life that we built together, I'm so proud of. We're very proud of each other and the special relationship that we have. Wherever our future paths may lead, we know for sure that we'll always be in each other's lives. As for me, my future is pretty bright. I found someone who makes me very happy. Unlike the setbacks, heartbreaks, and noticeable disasters that I experienced over the past few years, Jeff brings me the kind of joy that makes me hopeful and excited about the possibilities. On that final note, I'd like to extend a warm mahalo nui to all of you in attendance today. I really appreciate your aloha and kako'o. For those of you who share a similar journey to mine, I hope the ideas, questions, and anecdotes in this presentation inform and inspire you to live your best authentic self. Don't give in to fear, shame, or guilt, but instead be lifted up with acts of forgiveness, acceptance, and love by those who advocate for wellness and happiness, as well as self-love for yourself. Mahalo nui.